Hey man, the first mindset that separates men who never chase from those who constantly fall into that emotional trap is this: the belief that silence is a power move, not a void to fill. Most guys panic when a woman pulls away. They think, I have to do something or I'll lose her. But a man who never chases has already accepted that a woman who can walk away should. He's not interested in plugging emotional leaks or patching up what she's tearing down. His strength doesn't come from controlling her emotions, it comes from controlling his own. When she goes cold, distant, or flaky, he doesn't blow up her phone. He doesn't try to explain himself, and he definitely doesn't ask what's wrong. He lets her face the silence, because that silence reveals everything. It shows her who she is when he stops performing. It shows her that his presence was not desperation, it was a choice. And when she realizes he's not coming after her, that's when the power shifts. Because a man who can detach is a man she can never fully control. And that mystery, that absence of need, that's the beginning of addiction. Her mind races, not because of what he did, but because of what he didn't do. The second mindset is this: he is the prize, not her attention, not her body, not her approval. You see, most men unconsciously place women on a pedestal, thinking that if they act nice enough, calm enough, understanding enough, she'll choose them. But the man who doesn't chase doesn't view women as something to acquire. He views himself as something to protect. His values, his time, his energy, they are currency. And he doesn't just hand that over to anyone with a pretty face and validation issues. He's seen what chasing gets you: exhaustion, confusion, and worst of all, self-betrayal. And so, he plays a different game. He makes her work for him, not in some manipulative way, but through standards. He doesn't bend his identity to fit her whims. He doesn't abandon his path to win her favor. She has to earn a place beside him. Because real masculinity is not about pleasing women, it's about leading your own life so powerfully that they want to follow. And if she doesn't, he doesn't beg, he doesn't sulk, he keeps moving forward, because he knows women chase men who don't need them. Third mindset: detachment is preparation, not punishment. This man doesn't detach because he's hurt or bitter. He detaches because he understands that most women don't even know what they want. One day she's hot, the next day she's indifferent. One week she's crying about how much she loves him, and the next she's liking her ex's stories. A man who never chases knows he can't build anything stable on the shifting sands of her emotional whims, so he detaches not to hurt her, but to protect himself. He creates emotional distance, not as revenge, but as a filter. He watches what she does when he stops being her emotional support system. Does she step up, or does she disappear? Does she seek clarity, or does she create chaos? He uses detachment as a magnifying glass. It shows him who she really is, not just who she pretended to be during the honeymoon phase. And the beauty is, he doesn't announce it. He doesn't say, I'm pulling back. He just stops showing up, and her mind does the rest. Because no reaction is the loudest message a man can send. The fourth mindset is savage but true. He never tries to out-emotion a woman. When she gets dramatic, when she starts emotional manipulation, when she flirts with other guys to test him, he doesn't get louder, he gets calmer. He knows that women use emotion as a weapon, and the moment a man tries to fight her on her level, he loses. She can cry louder, she can blame harder, she can argue longer. But what she can't do is stay in control when her tactics don't work. And so the man who never chases, he doesn't engage, he doesn't get caught in emotional warfare. He observes, he lets her throw her tantrums, he lets her make her passive-aggressive moves, and then he makes decisions, not emotional reactions. Decisions. He stays silent, not because he's weak, but because he's done explaining his worth to someone who only sees it when he walks away. And once she realizes she can't manipulate him with emotion, that's when the game changes. That's when she gets hooked, not on his reactions, but on his restraint. Finally, the fifth mindset is this: he lives in abundance, not scarcity. The man who never chases understands one brutal truth: he is not irreplaceable in her eyes, unless she feels he's irreplaceable in his own. That means he's not clinging to one woman, one outcome, one storyline. He's open to what serves him, not addicted to who entertains him. He doesn't fear her leaving because he knows that anyone who leaves was never meant to stay. And that mindset, it's freedom. It's not about sleeping with dozens of women or acting cold. It's about knowing his life is so rich, so full, so deeply built on purpose that a woman walking away doesn't collapse anything. In fact, it just makes more room for peace. And when women sense that level of abundance, not just financially, but spiritually, emotionally, they become obsessed. Because most men they meet are starving for love, dying for attention, but he's already full. And women always chase the man who can walk away with peace in his chest and a calm smirk on his face. The sixth mindset, he understands the power of unpredictability. You see, men who chase are predictable. They're always available, always texting, always initiating, always trying to do the right thing to keep her interest alive. But the man who never chases, he moves like smoke. He's not trying to be mysterious for the sake of manipulation. He simply has a life that isn't orbiting her. He might respond, he might not. He might be available, he might not be. And that unpredictability, that lack of routine validation, it drives her wild. Because women don't fantasize about what's always there. They obsess over what's just out of reach. And when a man doesn't broadcast his every move, when he isn't emotionally predictable, she starts wondering, why isn't he chasing me like the others? That question creates doubt. Doubt turns into obsession, and before she even realizes it, she's the one chasing. Not because he tricked her, but because he stopped needing her to feel secure. She senses his calm indifference, and that's what makes her unravel. Predictability is comforting, but unpredictability, that's addictive. Another core mindset these men hold is this: he doesn't fall in love with potential, he watches her patterns. A lot of men chase because they fall for the version of her they imagined in their mind. They fall in love with how sweet she was at the start, how affectionate she was in the beginning. But the man who never chases, he knows the beginning is always a fantasy. So he waits, he watches, he looks for her defaults, not her declarations. What does she do when she's upset? How does she handle conflict? Does she talk trash about her ex? Does she crave drama? He doesn't ignore red flags just because she looks good in a dress or moans his name. He's immune to the seduction of potential. Because potential is cheap, it's a sales pitch. He wants to see how she moves when things don't go her way. He wants to see if she respects him when he says no. That's when the truth comes out. And the man who never chases has trained himself to fall for reality, not fantasy. That's what protects his heart. That's what preserves his masculinity. The eighth mindset that defines these men is simple but lethal. He doesn't over-explain. Most guys make the mistake of thinking women want logic, clarity, and reassurance when dating, but what she really wants is to feel something. And when you're constantly explaining your intentions, your feelings, your reasons for pulling back, you kill the mystery. You hand her control. But the man who never chases, he lets his actions speak. If he's distant, he doesn't justify it. If he's not feeling the vibe, he doesn't give a 10-slide emotional presentation on why he's emotionally unavailable. He simply pulls back, because deep down, he knows that the more a woman feels like she has to wonder what he's thinking, the more emotionally invested she becomes. That space between what is he thinking and does he still want me is where obsession is born. And he doesn't fill that space with paragraphs or pleasantries. He lets her stew in it, because a woman who's trying to figure him out is too busy to figure someone else in. And when she finally realizes she's doing all the chasing, all the explaining, all the performing, it's already too late. He's become the obsession. Ninth mindset, he doesn't seek peace from women, he brings peace into their lives. This is the one that breaks the pattern completely. Most men chase because they're seeking something. Emotional security, affirmation, meaning, even a sense of identity. But men who never chase already are the source. Their life is stable, their thoughts are clear, their values are strong, and so when a woman enters their world, she doesn't feel like she's being pursued, she feels like she's being grounded. She feels safe, not because he's worshipping her, but because he's deeply centered in who he is. And that energy is rare. Women crave it, even if they don't understand why. She might fight it, test it, try to rattle it, but she always comes back to it. Because a man who's at peace with himself is more powerful than a man who tries to please. She may love a man who chases her, but she respects the man who doesn't need to, and respect, that's where true attraction is born. You can buy attention, you can fake chemistry, but you cannot fake the weight of a man who knows who he is. And the final mindset in this first section is this: he does not attach to outcomes, he attaches to standards. A man who never chases doesn't care if she likes him. He doesn't care if the date leads to sex. He doesn't care if she ghosts, plays games, or chooses another man. Why? Because he's not attached to her. He's attached to how he operates. His standard is peace. His standard is effort, reciprocated. His standard is consistency. And if she can't meet that, she's not the one who got away. She's the one who filtered herself out. Men who chase are addicted to potential outcomes. They chase the happy ending. But men who don't chase, they protect their integrity first. And that means if she falls short of the bar, he doesn't lower it. He walks away. He knows every time you lower your standards to keep a woman interested, you train her to disrespect you. But when you keep your standards and let her rise or fall on her own, you become the man she never forgets. Because you didn't need her, you needed truth. And that mindset, that's unbreakable. The 11th mindset, he never rewards inconsistency with presence. When she stops being warm, stops initiating, becomes vague, distant, passive, cold, he doesn't lean in. He doesn't try harder. He doesn't double text. He doesn't ask what's wrong. He simply pulls away without a word. Because he knows what most men learn too late. Attention is currency, and the more you spend it on someone who is inconsistent, the cheaper you become in their eyes. A man who never chases understands that a woman's hot and cold behavior is a test, not of love, but of leverage. She wants to see if she can control the temperature, if she can play with his emotions without paying the price. But when she realizes that her silence is met with his disappearance, not desperation, she recalibrates. He trains her without saying a word, because she learns that inconsistent behavior results in consistent consequences. No attention, no reaction, no explanation, just silence. And nothing scares a woman more than a man whose absence is more powerful than another man's presence. The 12th mindset that separates him is this: he sees through beauty like it's glass. Most men crumble under beauty. They compromise their self-respect, abandon their values, and erase their standards just to keep a beautiful woman happy. But the man who never chases, he's been around long enough to know beauty is everywhere, and more importantly, beauty fades. What he's really looking at is behavior. What does she do with her beauty? Does she use it to manipulate, to test, to get away with poor treatment? Or does she pair it with loyalty, consistency, and maturity? You see, he's not blinded by looks, he's sharpened by experience. He's not interested in being chosen by a beautiful woman. He's interested in choosing a woman who can match his values. And that shift in perspective changes everything. Because now, instead of bending for her, he watches. He lets her beauty pass through him like smoke. It doesn't alter his decisions. It doesn't trap his attention. He sees the game and he plays a bigger one. One based on emotional quality, not visual appeal. And that kind of discernment, that's what turns him into the one she can't stop thinking about. Because he's the only one who saw through the surface and didn't flinch. 13th mindset. He never argues about respect. He just disappears. Most men make the mistake of thinking they can talk their way into being respected. They try to explain why something she did hurt them. They try to set boundaries after she's already crossed them. They try to beg for understanding. But a man who never chases doesn't explain his value. He shows it. If she raises her voice, disrespects him, flirts with others, or disrespects his time, he doesn't argue. He doesn't call her out in a loud emotional explosion. He just exits, quietly, instantly, because he knows the moment you have to explain why something is disrespectful, she already knows. She's just seeing if you'll tolerate it. And if you do, even once, she loses respect. So this man doesn't give her that option. He holds his boundaries like a king guards his throne firmly, without theatrics. He's not looking for drama, he's looking for peace. And if a woman can't coexist with his peace, she's not for him. No screaming, no begging, just gone. And it's that sudden absence, that clean cut, that leaves the deepest mark on her psyche. Because she expected a reaction and got a standard. The 14th mindset is painful but liberating. He knows women love emotionally unavailable men, and he uses that truth to stay grounded. While most men try to become more emotional to get closer to women, the man who never chases does the opposite. He's emotionally grounded, not emotionally indulgent. He doesn't trauma dump, doesn't overshare, and doesn't try to create emotional intimacy through constant vulnerability. Because he's seen what happens when a man gives too much too soon. He gets labeled weak, too nice, too available, so he keeps his emotions balanced. Not hidden, not fake, balanced. He shows presence, not pressure, depth, not desperation. He knows how to connect without collapsing. And because of that, women sense a certain emotional danger in him. They don't know what he's really thinking. They don't feel they've fully cracked him. And that unknown keeps them chasing, keeps them obsessing. Because what you don't understand, you try to conquer. And what you can't conquer, you crave. That's the emotional leverage he holds. Not by withholding who he is, but by never handing himself over too soon. Finally, the 15th mindset in this section. He's always willing to lose her to keep himself. This is the core of everything. Men who chase are terrified of loss. They fear being alone, fear being forgotten, fear missing the only chance they think they have. But the man who never chases, he's already made peace with walking away. He knows his self-worth is not tied to any one woman. He doesn't beg to be kept. He doesn't water down his truth to keep the peace. He says what needs to be said. He stands firm where most men fold. And if that pushes her away, so be it. Because he understands something deeper. Every time you abandon yourself to keep someone else, you train your soul to shrink. And he refuses to shrink. Not for love, not for sex, not for beauty. He'd rather be alone with his dignity than adored with conditions. And that energy, that deep, unwavering alignment with himself, that's what draws women in. Because a man who can't be bought, who won't be swayed, who doesn't need her, is the man she ends up needing most. The 16th mindset that defines men who never chase women is this: he doesn't chase energy, he studies it. Most guys see a flirty woman and take it as green light to go all in. She smiles, sends a cute emoji, replies quickly, and he assumes she's interested. But the man who never chases, he's not so easily moved. He understands that women test with energy, not with commitment. He watches what her attention is like over time. Is it consistent or scattered? Does she invest effort when she's not getting praise in return? Or does she vanish the moment he stops validating her? He looks at the pattern, not the moment, because he knows a lot of women are addicted to being desired, not actually desiring the man, and he refuses to be a source of temporary emotional stimulation for someone who has no intention of truly connecting. So while others get swept up by the flirtation, the likes, the compliments, he stays rooted in his awareness. He doesn't move on energy alone, he moves when effort is proven. Because attention is easy, but loyalty over time, that's rare. And he only responds to rare. 17th mindset. He is the prize in every room he walks into. Not because of ego, not because he thinks he's better than others, but because he's mastered himself. And in the dating world, that kind of man is rare. While others build their value based on who likes them, who validates them, or how many matches they get, this man builds his value from within. His habits are disciplined, his thoughts are sharp, his time is sacred, and that energy radiates. He walks into a room like he's supposed to be there, because he is. He doesn't need to impress or perform. He lets others reveal themselves, and in doing so, he becomes the gravitational force. Women sense it immediately, not because of what he says, but because of what he withholds. He doesn't overshare, he doesn't overdo, he just exists with power. And because he sees himself as the prize, he doesn't chase, he attracts. He lets her come closer, and if she doesn't, he continues walking, because a man who knows his worth never waits to be chosen. He chooses himself, and that self-respect becomes irresistible. The 18th mindset is this: he doesn't bond through pain, he bonds through purpose. So many men fall into emotional traps by connecting with women over shared trauma, sadness, or vulnerability. And while emotional openness has its place, the man who never chases doesn't lead with wounds, he leads with purpose. He invites her into his mission, not his misery. He talks about where he's going, not just where he's been, because he understands that the foundation of attraction is not shared suffering, it's inspired direction. When a woman feels like she's stepping into the life of a man who knows what he's building, where he's headed, and why he's doing it, she feels safe, she feels excited, she feels like she's becoming part of something greater than herself. But when she's pulled into his emotional chaos, his need for therapy disguised as conversation, she feels burdened. The man who never chases offers her elevation, not emotional extraction. And because of that, she doesn't just feel attracted, she feels magnetized. Like she's not falling for him, she's rising because of him. 19th mindset. He never lets intimacy buy his compliance. Most men crumble the moment they experience sex, affection, or validation from a woman. They shift their boundaries, they soften their standards, they stop saying no. But the man who never chases remains unshaken. He understands that intimacy is not a reward, it's an experience. And that experience does not entitle her to control his decisions, emotions, or time. He doesn't become nicer after sex. He doesn't become more lenient. He doesn't text her more, because to him, the physical act was enjoyable, but it didn't alter his internal code. His decisions are not based on feelings, they're based on values, and when a woman realizes that her body doesn't give her leverage over him, she becomes intrigued. then she becomes invested, because she's used to men who weaken after getting what they want. But when he stays the same, solid, firm, unmoved, he proves that he didn't need her, he wanted the experience, and that distinction changes everything. It makes her chase, it makes her respect, and it makes her stay up at night wondering how to earn a man who refuses to be bought. The 20th mindset is the backbone of it all. He doesn't date to feel better, he dates because he's already whole. This man doesn't date because he's lonely. He doesn't flirt because he's empty. He doesn't pursue because he lacks purpose. His life is already full. He's got his work, his mission, his body, his values, his peace. He's not trying to fill a void. He's simply inviting someone to experience his already fulfilling world. And that's what makes him dangerous. Because women can sense the difference between a man who needs them and a man who chooses them. And choice always hits harder than need. The man who never chases isn't emotionally unavailable. He's emotionally abundant. And because of that, his standards are high. He doesn't tolerate chaos. He doesn't entertain red flags. He doesn't accept disrespect. No matter how good the sex is or how long they've been talking, his presence is earned. And once a woman realizes she's being invited, not rescued, she either steps up or falls off, and either outcome is fine with him, because he'll still be whole either way. The 21st mindset that keeps him untouchable is this. He doesn't believe words, he watches patterns. Every man who gets played learns this the hard way. She says all the right things, talks about loyalty, says she's not like other girls, promises she's serious. But the man who never chases, he doesn't care what she says, he observes what she does. Is she consistent? Does she reach out when he stops? Does she support his goals or distract him from them? Does she escalate the connection or just mirror his effort when it's convenient? Most men fall into the trap of believing affection equals investment, but the truth is, attention is cheap, and love, without discipline and consistency, is nothing but dopamine. So he watches, quietly. He sees if her behavior matches her words. If she says she values him, but disappears for 3 days without explanation, he believes the action, not the apology. That's why she can't manipulate him with guilt, because he's immune to pretty lies. He doesn't want promises, he wants proof. And in a world where everyone's acting, that makes him the hardest role to play for long. The 22nd mindset is this. He moves slower than everyone else, but with more clarity. While most men rush into attraction, rush into dates, rush into commitment out of fear they'll lose her, this man moves with calculated patience. He knows women are used to emotional acceleration, guys falling for them in a week, talking about vibes, diving into intimacy before trust is built. But this man is different. He holds back, he observes, he doesn't rush to label, he doesn't try to impress, because he's not trying to get her, he's trying to see her. What does she do when she's annoyed? How does she act when she doesn't get her way? What are her habits when no one's watching? He uses time like a scalpel, cutting through the surface, and by the time other men are talking about love after 3 weeks, he's still in quiet assessment mode. That's why he rarely ends up with drama. He screens it before it gets close. Women sense this slowness. At first it confuses them, then it intrigues them, and before long, it consumes them, because the man who moves slowly has nothing to prove and everything to protect. 23rd mindset, he stays unpredictable, but not inconsistent. There's a difference between being unstable and being mysterious. The man who never chases isn't hot and cold, he's steady, but he's also a mystery. He doesn't reveal everything about himself. He doesn't overshare his schedule. He disappears sometimes, not as a game, but because he's building. He's in his world, not hers. And when she texts and he replies 6 hours later, she doesn't feel neglected. She feels curious. What was he doing? Who's he with? Why isn't he like the others? That curiosity becomes obsession. And that's not manipulation, it's nature. Because when a man's life is full, a woman feels like she's earning access, and people always value what they earn. He knows that. He's not playing hard to get, he's just hard to own. He's selective with energy, scarce with attention, and precise with words. That unpredictability keeps her locked in, because she knows he's consistent, but not available on demand. And that balance, it drives her wild. Not because he's confusing, but because he's compelling. And compelling men don't chase, they move, and she follows. The 24th mindset is personal. He's been betrayed, and he turned that pain into precision. He knows what it's like to chase a woman who doesn't care. He remembers the ghosting, the breadcrumbing, the moments he begged for love from someone who weaponized it, and instead of turning bitter, he turned powerful. He studied his mistakes, he learned the patterns, he faced the truth about female nature, about hypergamy, about emotional games, and now that memory fuels his discipline. He doesn't need to test women, he already knows what to look for. He doesn't chase, not because he's heartless, but because he once chased and got burned, and now his standards are built on scars. That's why he sees through manipulation so fast. That's why his silence cuts so deep. That's why women who used to run game on other men hesitate around him, because he's been to the fire and came out forged, not fragile. And when a man has healed through truth instead of fantasy, he becomes the nightmare of every woman who thought she could toy with him. Because he doesn't play anymore, he chooses. And his choices always reflect his pain turned power. The final mindset that defines him: he doesn't need to be loved, he needs to be respected. Most men are addicted to being liked. They seek validation, they want women to adore them, approve of them, admire them. But this man is different. He'd rather be feared than admired. He'd rather be respected than desired, because he knows that desire fades, but respect echoes. He understands that the only way to hold power in a relationship is to never trade self-respect for affection. He doesn't beg to be understood. He doesn't argue to be seen. He speaks his truth and walks away from those who can't handle it, because at the end of the day, he'd rather walk alone with integrity than walk beside someone who only stayed because he begged. He doesn't compromise his masculinity to make her feel comfortable. He doesn't soften his edges to avoid her rejection. He is what he is, unapologetic, firm, centered, and that's why she stays. That's why she watches his stories, texts when he's silent, obsesses when he's distant, because while others gave her attention, he gave her something far more rare, a man she couldn't move.